everybody. Welcome back to Pagan's Witchy Corner. My name is Pagan, and I am joined by a very awesome author that I've been super excited to talk to, and that is J. Allen Cross, who is the author of The Witch's Guide to the Paranormal. Jay, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
I am so happy to have you. I saw your book in the Llewellyn catalog and was like, that looks interesting. I want to know more about this. This is going to be interesting. Immediately got a copy of it, devoured the book. I also bought the audiobook because I like to have both as I'm reading. It makes my brain process and remember things a lot easier. But it was such a great book. It was literally the book that I wish that I could give to people when they say, "Oh, I want to go and become a paranormal investigator." There was no handbook beforehand. Now there is one.
Excellent. That was my exact goal because I was like, I kind of talk about this in the book a little bit. When I joined paranormal investigation, I had a background already in a lot of this
Mhm.
stuff. And so I just assumed everybody else who's doing paranormal investigation had that same background.
Nope.
And then I was so shocked when I actually started joining up with teams and working, with other people in the community that most people have no idea how to actually interact with a haunting besides documentation.
Mhm.
And so, as much as I wanted this to be something for the witches, I felt that also, your standard garden variety paranormal investigators also really need this information as well. So, I exactly wanted to do that. I wanted to create a handbook or a manual for, hauntings and how to work with them and interact with them and kind of provide it to the world because I couldn't find something like that. So, I wanted to hopefully provide it or at least one of or at least start something. So maybe if I do it, then other people will follow behind with their wisdom as well, which is always something that I'm hoping for. So we'll see what comes of it.
I think that you did such a brilliant job with it. And one of the things I really enjoyed about your book was the fact that it wasn't, when you expect kind of a guidebook, you expect it to be a little bit kind of heavy on the literature. It was a very humorous book. There were a lot of kind of joking anecdotes throughout it that just made me kind of giggle. And I'm like, he really said that. Okay. All right. I like this. This is going to be a fun book. And of course, I don't remember any of them off the top of my head because it's been a couple weeks since I read them. But if you are somebody who is interested in a really great book, this is going to be that shameless pitch moment, everyone. So head over to Amazon, head over to your bookstore, wherever you'd like to buy your books. Go pick up a copy. Trust me, if you're interested in the paranormal, this is the book you need to buy today. Buy it for your holiday
Definitely.
shopping. Black Friday is right around the corner. So, well, by the time you get this, Black Friday will be over. So, apologies for that. But I'm sure the deals will still be running between now and the holidays. So, grab a copy, everybody. I promise you're gonna love it.
Absolutely. And now is a great time to do it because I guess they didn't expect there to be such a response to it. So it's been back ordered for months and people are just now
Really?
getting their copies and like bookstores and stuff. I've been like, oh hey, I'm coming by. Do you guys have them? And they're like, no, we've been trying to get it and like no one has it and everyone wants it. And I'm like, that's a good and a bad problem to have. So luckily, they have been showing up. We've gotten a bunch more printed, which is a great thing. So now is a good time to buy.
Yes, that is so awesome. And I'm so glad that there was such a great response to this book. And I know when I wrote the review and started kind of posting the review around social media, a lot of people are like, I need to buy this book. How good is it? And I'm like, well, for starters, you could go read the review I wrote about it. But secondly, I will gladly tell you it's a great book and a worthy buy, especially if you're interested in the paranormal. And it's really kind of a fun thing, too, because when I was reading the book, I'm like, this is everything I have been saying about the paranormal community forever, that we need to have these ethical investigations, that we need to be treating the spirits with a heck of a lot more respect than we do, especially a lot more respect than is seen on paranormal television.
Yes.
And that is one of the biggest downfalls, I think, to the paranormal investigation world is paranormal television. And the fact that, yes, we should document it, but a lot of the times the ones that get to be the big voice out there are so disrespectful to the spaces and the spirits, and it's like,
Hmm.
oh. And like there's a few shows, I'm not going to name any names, but there are a few shows out there that I cannot watch because I spend the whole hour watching the episode screaming at the television.
Right. Right. And that's something too that I think has created such a big barrier between witches and the world of paranormal investigation. Because when I began to market this book and kind of tell people about it and kind of post about it on social media and in witchcraft spaces where I'm like, hey, I'm writing this book about, witches joining, paranormal investigation. I got some very odd responses because again, this is something that I think all people know and they don't, is a great deal of witches, their only interaction or resource for paranormal investigation has been television.
Mm-hmm.
And so not only was I finding a lot of people who thought that what they saw on TV is traditional paranormal investigation. I had someone call television paranormal investigation traditional investigation.
Nope.
Um,
It's
and I
actually the
had
minority, just for the
right,
record.
exactly. I'm like, I'm trying to impress upon people that's like, okay, it's on television. This is what we call para entertainment.
Mm-hmm.
And I think as witches, we should know that media representation is not always what it's cracked up to be. But something else that I was really surprised by was a great number of witches truly believed that paranormal investigation is only something that happens on and for television. And so I got a lot of responses that were like, why would I want this book? I don't want to be on TV. And
Really?
I was like, wait, you think that the only reason why you would do paranormal investigation is to get on or be on TV? They're like, yeah, there's no other reason for it. And it just blew my mind
Wow. I have
that,
not heard those responses in regards to that, but still, wow.
yeah. And that's when I kind of went like, oh, we really, really, really need this book, don't we? Yeah, it's like,
Yes.
oh, just because that's not what it's supposed to be like. In fact, my team and pretty much every other paranormal investigation team that I ran across, A, has no desire to be on television, and
Hmm.
B, has very strict rules around respect for the spirits. And a lot of
Absolutely.
investigation teams that I come across have rules that if you are, antagonizing the spirits, you're off at the very least that case, if not off the team.
Hmm.
Um, which I think is something that a lot of people don't know that off television, the temperament around it is very different.
Now, the one thing I do want to make very clear to the audience who's listening, there is a difference between setting boundaries with spirits and antagonizing
Mm-hmm.
the spirit.
Yes.
And your book makes that very, very clear that you can have strict boundaries with a spirit, just like you can with a human being, of saying, no, this is my space. No, you can't do that. No, that's not allowed. Versus
Hmm.
berating them and being terrible to them. If somebody is terrible to you in real life, why would you do that to somebody who's dead?
Exactly.
And that's something that a lot of, especially new paranormal investigators who go in there, like, oh, but they do it on TV. And I'm like, just because they do it on TV doesn't mean you should do it in real life. People commit murder on television shows as well. Should you do that? No, no, that's
Yeah,
bad
let's
and
not.
illegal. So, yeah.
Exactly.
Now, we know kind of why you wanted to write this book, but what was your favorite part about writing this book?
Ooh, that is a great question. Oh, there were so many parts of it that I really enjoyed writing. One of my favorite sections in it that a lot of people, well, I guess I have two favorite sections in it that I think people aren't expecting when it
Mm-hmm.
comes to this book. Because I go over paranormal investigation stuff. I go over like the lingo, like what is an EVP, and what is a spirit box, and things like that,
Right.
which I think are important. But I have a whole chapter on portals, doorways, and highways,
Mm-hmm.
which is something that we don't always talk about or people don't know about. And I find that this tends to be a lot of people's Achilles heel when they start to go clear homes and then the activity comes back over and over again. And they think that that they're not good enough, that they've done something wrong. But the truth of the matter is that they've simply missed something. And it's that there's a big open doorway somewhere
Mm-hmm.
in there. And there's also techniques that I discuss not only for closing those or kind of manipulating portals, but also erecting actual boundaries because sometimes you have a very unruly spirit and you need to buy yourself some time. And so I teach you how to like corral it in one area. So you
Yes.
can like lock a spirit in a room, which is not a permanent solution, but it might buy you some time while you figure out while you regroup and kind of decide what else to do. So that was a part that I really love to talk about. I also have a section on developing mediumship skills,
Mm-hmm.
talking about what mediumship is, the different kinds of mediumship, which is kind of a little bit of a controversial section, but it was also one of my favorites. And the last one that I thought was so important that I originally wasn't going to add, and then I was like, you know what? They're going to need this. And it's a whole section at the very end about working with clients.
Yes.
Because at the end of the day, this is a customer service job. You're going into someone's house, you are, dealing with their stuff. And so you have to know how to talk to people, how to handle people, and how to not terrify people. Because I think part of this whole TV paranormal thing as well is this new thing where people walk into someone's house and go, "You have a demon." And then
Oh,
everyone
yes.
panics. And it's like, okay, how do we deliver certain news in a way that's tactful? And also how do we work with these different clients that you're going to see over and over again? So for instance, the family skeptic, how
Mm-hmm.
do you deal with them? And so I share some of my stories, some of my realizations about these people that you're going to run into over and over again and what I have found helpful. So sometimes the living can be as hard to work with as the dead. And I wanted to kind of give a very well rounded toolkit for all of that.
I think you did an excellent job, and I also really like the section of the book that you talked about going into a client's home and having them eventually kind of reluctantly divulge that somebody played with a Ouija board. And the
Mm-hmm,
fact that, playing with Ouija boards isn't necessarily bad or harmful,
hmm.
but if you're doing it and you don't know what you're doing and it's like practicing witchcraft without learning the boundaries and the very basics of what you're supposed to know. And you talk about that. And it was such a beautiful way that you talked about this. And I'm like, oh, he wrote the book that I've been trying to tell everybody for years that needed to be written. And then, of course, there's a lot of the, paranormal investigators out there that don't want to be on television, but they don't
Yeah.
want to also be one of the big name ones. They just kind of want to do their thing and kind of help spirits and help people, but they don't want to be huge out in the paranormal world. And so a lot of times people who are like, "Oh, well you work with the paranormal and you don't have a big name, so you must not know what you're doing."
Right.
And that's such a terrible stigma that needs to stop, because you can work with the paranormal. You can know what you're doing. You can have researched for years and still be on the quiet end of the spectrum. And trust me, you're just fine. And I would say possibly even more so than some of the ones that are the bigger name ones that we see on television. Those are not
Yes.
always the best voices to listen to. Granted, they're
Very
the
much
flashy
so.
ones and they do all the fun stuff and they get a little scary sometimes, but most of the time they're actually really harmful. And they have gone about doing this whole thing of, you have a demon in your house. No, you
Right.
have a spirit that doesn't know how to communicate very clearly. And then
Right.
you have a spirit that is like, okay, I'm trying to communicate, but you only listen to me when I break something.
Right.
And it's like,
Or too, like, and
yeah.
something that I try and impress upon people is that it's like there's a difference between something being evil and something just doing its natural processes. So it's
Mm-hmm.
like this idea of like the spider and the fly. From the fly's perspective, the spider's pretty evil. But
Right.
the truth of the matter is that the spider's got to eat. That's
Mm-hmm.
its natural process. That's what it does. And so when I run across these negative entities, what a lot of people end up calling demons on television, it's not because they're there to steal your soul. It's there because they're hungry. And what they
Right.
eat is fear,
Mm-hmm.
and you're an excellent target for that. So it's a little less good and evil, so much as it is kind of more of a predator prey situation,
Mm-hmm.
which I find is a little bit more understanding a lot of the time.
It is a lot more understanding a lot of the time too. And I remember, for example, I live on a haunted farm, if you'd like to call it
Ooh,
that, but I don't call it that. I just call it a place where spirits like to congregate sometimes. I don't like to use the term it's haunted, because then everyone's like, ooh, it's scary. No, it's not. My favorite spirit who happens to reside in my house is my coffee ghost. And
you have a coffee
I have a
ghost?
coffee ghost. I don't know who he was, but I do know that when he was alive, he absolutely was infatuated with coffee. He was a coffee connoisseur. And so, vicariously through the living, now he likes to just smell the coffee when it's being brewed in the morning. And he gets very indignant if you do not brew a cup of coffee in the morning. He will slam the cabinet door. He will rattle the cups. He gets very indignant about it because all he wants to do is smell the coffee. So as long as you brew a cup of coffee, he is perfectly content and very happy. And he means no harm. He just misses coffee. That's the whole thing. So he is my coffee ghost, and we love him.
That
He
is so funny.
he's such a funny ghost, and he really does get mad if you don't brew coffee. And especially if we have like a doctor's appointment where we have to fast and we can't brew coffee, then we have to go and explain to him, we're like, we can't brew coffee right now, but we'll brew some later.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, he's a funny ghost, and we have some other ghosts on the farm that are residuals, and we have some others
Mhm.
that are very interesting. We have a one that is less than savory, as I like to call him, but he does
Mm.
understand the boundaries of our home, and he likes to stand outside our house and scream at us as we walk outside.
Oh, love that.
Yeah, I'm just like, dude, I don't know what your issue is, but not today, and you can't come in the house because you don't mean to be nice to us, so you can't come in.
Yeah.
And he respects that. He never tries to push the boundaries, but he does stand outside, and as we walk to our cars, he'll yell at us. He's a grouchy old man. I don't know where these spirits have come from. They're not tied to the land, but I do know that a lot of the spirits that have come across here are because of the fact that we don't mean harm to them. And they know that they can come and reside here for as long as they need to and then go about their business. As long as they
I
do not cross those boundaries of, if you're going to be bad, you can't come inside.
mhm. Absolutely, because that's something too that, like, I talk about in the book is that everyone thinks that if you have a haunting, that that means that they had something to do with that space,
Mm-hmm.
or they live there, or they died there, or they built it. Sometimes they're from a couple miles away
Mm-hmm.
and just wandered over and decided that they really liked your space, so decided to hang out for one reason or another. Either, your kids remind them of their own, or they just love your decor, or like you said, you have kind of a safe space for them. So sometimes they're from a ways away and they just
Mm-hmm.
kind of end up at your space because it's comfortable for them.
Absolutely. And
Mhm.
I think that that's something that we also kind of don't, especially, in the modern mainstream paranormal scene, we're not really talking about the fact that not all hauntings are bad. And sometimes you can basically have a ghost roommate and it's okay. They're not
Mhm.
there to hurt you. If they start to get, kind of annoyed with you, then you might want to call in somebody who's can help you figure out what the issue is. But ultimately, most of the time they just want to live in their shared space. And there was somebody who told me, I think it was Michelle Belanger, who told me that I, all spirit activity and all earthly activity is kind of like a Venn diagram. We all overlap each other, but we're technically
Mhm.
still in two separate spaces. And I thought that was such
Yes.
a beautiful way to put it. And so many things about your book just really hit that home. And it's like, yes, 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 he gets it. He wrote the manual. Everyone, go buy it.
Absolutely. And I love this idea of cohabitation with spirits because it definitely can happen. And something that I think you bring up that I think is important is this idea of, these are still people.
Yes.
They just don't have bodies anymore.
Hmm.
And so our interactions with them need to be the same as if we had a roommate. And the idea is still the same. Setting boundaries is really important. Hey, great. If you want to stay here, that's fine. But don't come into my room in the middle of the night. Like, that's
Yeah,
just something,
don't just stand
don't
at the
watch
foot
me
of
in the
the bed and watch
shower,
me. It's
Exactly.
creepy.
So it's setting boundaries is really important and also not overdoing it because there's this uptick. I guess now that everyone's doing spirit work or whatever, it's part of it. But there's this uptick that I've been seeing of someone being like, "Oh, I had this ghost causing problems in my home, so I built an altar to it." And I'm like, "No."
No,
Like
that's not. There's a difference between, helping said spirit, but treating it like a deity is a totally different session. No.
right, and imagine if your roommate started acting up and being a jerk, and so you built a shrine to them. That would be very weird.
That would be very weird
And
and
set up a
could go
very odd
so
power
badly.
imbalance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, don't do that. No shrines
We
to
just
creepy spirits or creepy entities.
yeah,
Um,
we're just no.
yeah, and I have another kind of funny story. My ex co-host on a different podcast that I was on, we used to do what was called Seance Saturdays, and we would just kind of contact spirits from the void and sit down and chit chat with them, and just kind of experiment with the spirit world. And there was one session that was so really intense, and afterwards I was going and I was doing my after cleansing routine of breaking all the energy that we had done and all that. And I was in the shower, and my husband, who was across the bathroom, who was talking to me about it, um was not facing the shower, and I remember seeing a shadow of a hand pointing towards the shower curtain. Like I could see it through the shower curtain. I was like, "What on earth?" I was like, "What are you pointing at?" And he's like, "I'm not pointing at anything." And he's like, "What are you talking about?" And there was a giant grasshopper on the shower curtain, and that's what the hand was pointing at. And it was basically like, "Don't freak out, but there's a bug there, and you're kind of afraid of bugs. Don't freak out."
Just a quick FYI.
Yeah, just a quick FYI. It's like, "Hey, I'm just letting you know that this is there." And the weirdest thing was, he was like, "I have not moved. My arms have been crossed. I have not moved at all. And I have no idea what you're talking about." And he was literally just on the other side of the bathroom. And it was the funniest thing. And I was like, "Oh, well, that was alarming a little bit." But at the same time, I'm like, "Thanks for letting me know, I think."
And there's something about being in the shower when paranormal activity happens, and it's like extra nope, where you're like, oh, thanks, but also no, no,
I'm like, "At
hate
least you
it.
weren't in the shower with me."
Right.
It was definitely a very interesting kind of thing. And so, what are your plans going forward? Are you planning on writing any more books when it comes to paranormal activity? Or is this your just one and done? Do you have any future plans with this?
I have been
And it's
interested in
okay if
doing
you want to keep it hush hush. That's totally fine too.
I do have a couple more books in mind, as far as kind of the witchy paranormal stuff.
Hmm.
I am curious about writing a book on spirit communication, but I want to wait on it a little bit because I don't want it just to be on mediumship itself. I want to
Hmm.
go into some of the other kind of spiritualist techniques. So something that I'm kind of a little bit obsessed with and trying to play around with is table tipping, which is something that
Oh,
we don't see much these days
yeah.
anymore. And so it's something that I'm fascinated by. I haven't had much success with it yet, but also I live in the middle of absolutely nowhere, so it's very hard to be like, "Hi, would you like to come over to my place or a random place and see if we can contact spirits?" Um, but it is something that I'm kind of experimenting with and seeing where we get, and so I would like to, incorporate things like that into it as well. But before I can write the book on it, I have to actually achieve it. So
That's completely fair. And table tipping is one of those things, I've never experienced it or attempted it. But it is definitely a fascinating one. I think probably my favorite form that I've been experimenting with as far as spirit and deity communication is using an oracle deck to have a conversation.
hmm,
And basically, as you're shuffling the deck, tell. I usually do it with deities over spirits because deities have a little more kind of ability to kind of put it in order of how you're going to ask the questions. And I'm just like,
mhm,
tell me to stop shuffling when all the questions are in order there. And then I just pull one card, and I will then be like, "Hey, here is my question." Pull the card, and the card is your answer. And
mhm.
surprisingly, at least with deity work, it is top notch on the money, and it works
Oh,
every time. And to the point that I'm just like, there's no possible way you could have put those cards in that order with me not even really knowing what the hell I was going to ask you. There's no way. And it works so well. It does not work very well with tarot decks because I think tarot decks are too broad of meanings, but
Yes.
oracle decks work really well. And
Mm,
so that is a fun kind of communication. I have not tried it extensively with spirits.
mhm.
The one time I did try it with the spirit, it worked okay. Um, but it wasn't as good as it was with deity. So I don't know if that's the right medium for it, but it was definitely an interesting thing. So if that's something that you want to play with, by all means, go for it. I encourage people to play as long as you know what you're doing and you know how to clean up a mess if you get yourself into one.
Right.
If you don't know how to do that, don't play. Learn how to clean up the mess first and then you can play.
Right,
Until
buy the
then,
book and then play.
yeah, buy the book and then learn.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's an interesting idea too, and I think sometimes the issue between, like, deity versus spirit is a lot of the time spirit is not familiar with
Mhm.
something like an oracle deck.
Yes, that is very
So,
true.
sometimes you have to kinda, like, show them a little bit and kind of explain it and then try and do it, and then sometimes that helps a little bit. I I tend to stay away from cards a little bit simply because unless they have a card that's like, like no answer or I don't know or something kind of like that,
Mhm.
because whenever you draw a card, you're always going to get an answer. It's like it's like when I see people online being like, "Oh, I'll tell you who your deity is because I have this stack of cards of deities,
Yeah.
and no matter what I pull, we're gonna get one." So,
Right.
but I think with this particular idea of like communication versus like who your person is, I think that there's a lot more possibility for it. Do you use a specific oracle deck?
It depends on who I'm talking to. So,
Oh.
I'm a massive collector of tarot and oracle decks. I have way too
Mm.
many and I probably should stop, but I can't because I love them. And creators keep coming out with gorgeous ones that I'm like, I have to own you. I'm sorry. I don't have
Of
the
course.
space for you, but I have to own you. So I think it really depends on who I'm talking to. And also the intent of the question line of questioning that I want to. Like if I'm having like a moral dilemma or something is going on that I really just need some kind of, guidance and answers, I will probably do a more serious kind of oracle deck. But if I'm
Mm-hmm.
doing something that, I really just want to have a get to know you kind of conversation, then I will do something a little bit kind of serious and a little bit fun. So there's, both interactions in there. And uh also like I said, depending on who I'm talking to will also determine my oracle deck. So if I'm talking to somebody like the Morgan, for example, I will probably do the last time I had a conversation with the Morgan, I used the Sacred Forest Oracle deck, which is
Mm.
such a gorgeous deck. Highly recommend it if anybody's looking for that. And if I'm trying to have a very stern, kind of shadow worky kind of conversation with the Morgan or any of the, I call them darker deities, but they're deities that have more serious undertones, I will use the Dark Mirror deck. And that oracle deck is the one that I tell everybody don't ask for a reading from it because it's going to bite you every time.
Oh, no.
It's not, it's one of those decks that it just slaps you with the brutal truth every time. So if you don't want that and you're not ready for that, don't ask for a reading from that deck. And it's true. Every person I've ever encountered that owns this deck says the exact same thing. So I don't
Oh.
know what it is, and the guidebook is not even worth its salt. But if you're somebody that can interpret based off of imagery,
Mm.
it's a great deck to own, especially if you're trying to get that shadow work in.
Especially if you need the spice.
If you need the spice and you are willing to get bit by a deck, then yes, buy that deck. Don't rely on the guidebook though, at all. The guidebook is more riddles than actual guides.
Oh, no.
Yeah. Um, but yeah, it really kind of depends on what I'm trying to do with it, but it does work really well. And we tried this, actually I had never tried it with a group before, and I host a Witchy Wednesday group with my online community and my Discord. And I said, "Hey, this is what I do. Do you guys want to try reaching out to a deity as a group and see how well it works?" I said, "I don't even know if this is going to work as a group." And they said, "Yeah, sure, let's try it. Let's see what happens. It'll be fun. And so we did. And the week before we did it, we, grabbed a deck and I started shuffling and I'm like, okay, who do we want to talk to? And we'll ask them if they want to talk to us. You should always ask somebody for permission to talk to them. Never expect them to show up. You always ask.
Mhm. You
Highly
gotta knock
recommend
on the
that.
door.
Yes, you have to
Can't
knock on
just
the
walk
door.
right in.
Yeah, you wouldn't want somebody to do that at your house. Just, manners. Manners are important,
Right.
even in spirit communication. So we were going through and they said, oh, well, why don't we talk to Diana? And I'm like, okay, I don't work with Diana. I don't know her very well. So we can try it. I will just be the fosterer of the cards. No problem. And Diana was kind of like, no, I'm not really big into this, but I'll show you who you can talk to. And I'm like, okay, well, who do we want to talk to then? Next card, pull it up. And I'm like, this is interesting. And it had very much kind of Athena vibes to it. And you open it up, the first line says Athena. And I'm like, are we
Oh,
going to talk to Athena? Is that who we're talking to? Is that what's happening here? And sure enough, that's exactly what happened. And it was such a fascinating experience that everyone's like, I cannot believe how well this is working. And I'm like, I know, I can't believe how well it's working either. And that's the best part about, paranormal work and experimenting is when something like that actually works. And you're like,
right.
oh, this is really cool. I want to do it again. And so, yeah, we had such a great time with it. And they were like, this was so much fun. I would have never thought about doing this. And I'm like, honestly, I was in a really bad place the first time I did it. And I said, I need answers that are clear, that I don't,
Mhm.
have to go, is this my brain? Is, this me manipulating it? And I was like, I need something that is so random that it cannot be construed as anything else. I need something that's going to work. And so I did the Oracle thing and it works fantastically. So I think it would be
Excellent.
fun to try with like working with spirits, but I know that it's definitely harder in my experience than it is with deity work.
Yes, absolutely. Because again, sometimes they don't understand, or sometimes it's just the act of trying to get them in the order they need to be in for them
Mhm.
is a
Yeah,
lot more
that's a lot of energy
complicated.
too. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that is definitely a fun thing. Now, do you have any classes or any kind of things that are coming up that you would like to promote for, the next couple of months or any of that fun stuff?
I am hoping in the new year to kind of build some online courses that people can just kind of purchase and kind of have like a series of
Mhm.
videos. So I am kind of working on that for the new year. Um, Also for my Portland people, on December 9th, I believe, I'm going to be in Portland at Sea Grape Apothecary,
Nice.
and I'm gonna be doing a pop-up shop, which is going to be a bunch of fun. So I'm gonna bring a lot of stuff that I've made, charms, charm bags, hanging wards. I've made witch bullets. I have all this stuff. And I'm gonna be dressing novena candles for people to take home. So you can come to me and be like, hey, I need a spell for this. And I'll pick one of my candles, dress it with oils and herbs, and then you can take it home with you and burn it at your convenience. So I'll be doing kind of spells to order while I'm there. So come on down to Sea Grape Apothecary. I'll be there Friday, December 9th from about 11 a.m. till about 3 p.m.
Nice.
So come on down, buy some stuff. I'll have oils, all kinds of stuff. So come and see me.
Yes, if you guys are in the Portland area, please go visit Jay on December the 9th. I guarantee you guys will love it. He just all of his stuff in his book that he talks about. If you can see him in person and just buy one of his spells, I guarantee you're gonna love every minute of it. It's gonna be so awesome. I wish I lived closer to
Definitely.
Portland. Otherwise, I would totally come visit. I'm across the country, sadly.
Oh no.
But that's okay. So you've got the pop-up classes coming hopefully in the new year, and you've got that on December 9th. And you said that you're in the process of, researching possible future books in terms of the paranormal, but do you have any other books or any other works that you've got coming up that you want to tease about?
I do have something that's sort of in the works as well that I'm is one of those that I've written several sections of, but I'm
Mm-hmm.
still not entirely certain how I want to put it together. I'm starting to realize though that I guess my thing when it comes to writing books for the, witchcraft community, my thing apparently is I'm going to take this thing over here and this thing over here, two things that should not go together at all, and I'm going to put them in the same book.
I love
Um,
it.
because apparently my purpose here is to be a bridge person, and I've just kind of accepted that. So I'm going to again be heading out into the witchcraft world and going, hey, those things that you say you shouldn't put together, we're going to do it. And it's going to be great. And it's going to be fine. And we're all going to have a good time. So I'm working on that right now.
I think that that sounds super awesome. You don't have to tell me all the details, but I'm excited to read that because I am somebody that, especially frequently on my show, I, preach the whole thing of do your practice your way. If
Yes.
this idea over here does not fit you, find something that works that, like, for example, a lot of people like to associate green with money. Money might be a
Mhm.
purple color for you. And if that's your thing, by all means, use it. And
Right.
I think that that's something that we often forget or often are told that we're not allowed to do. If it wasn't set in stone by one of the masters that has written the book so long ago and done the things,
Mhm.
you can't do it. But the thing is, nobody told them how to do it. There was no book beforehand. A lot of it was just experimentation on what worked for them, and they wrote it down.
Right,
And
and things
so,
like that are so
yeah,
subjective, like, green is American money, but I've
yes.
also been in other countries where the money is purple.
Right.
So, it's
Exactly.
like
I think
absolutely.
that's so awesome. And I am so excited for that book. I think that's going to be so great whenever you get that out. But today has been such a wonderful experience having you here on the show. I am so thankful for the guidebook that you have written for all of the paranormal community and witches. You don't have to be a witch to read the book, just for the record. You can
Definitely.
just be somebody out there that wants to explore the paranormal. It has everything in there that you need to know on A, how to keep yourself safe while working with the paranormal, and B, how to work with the paranormal ethically and effectively. Those are two things that you definitely need to remember, ethically and effectively, because if you don't do the ethical part, you are just as bad as some of the people out there that like to scream at ghosts on television, and that's not okay. We don't appreciate that.
100%.
So, Jay, thank you so much for being on the show. I hope you will come back in the future and chit chat with me some more. And everybody out there who is getting ready for the holidays and getting ready for Yule or whatever holiday you celebrate, stay safe, be careful, and happy holidays, everybody. Talk to you soon. Bye bye.